Alright guys, how's it going? My name is Nyxre and welcome back to another episode of The Good, The Bad, and The Teemo, where today I'll be discussing Jungle Vayne. As is provided at the beginning of every episode in the series, here's the reference guide for this particular build. I'm in no way saying that this is the best way to go about building Jungle Vayne, but it is the way I went about doing it for the purpose of this video. There are a lot of ways to build Vayne when playing her in the jungle, so if you do try it out, feel free to experiment a bit and find out whatever works best for you. An imgur link of this guide can be found down in the description. So let's start off with the good things about Jungle Vayne. The first of which is one of the best things about Vayne in general. She's arguably the best champion in the game at taking down tanks. Her percent health damage from her silver bolts, coupled with the damage from items like Blade of the Ruin King, will allow for you to melt down enemy tanks regardless of which stage of the game you are in. In the current meta, this is very useful as tanky top laners are very dominant, as many champions struggle to dish out enough damage in the time to deal with them. Another good thing about playing Vayne in the jungle is how easily she is able to kite most of the jungle camps. Her condemn keeps creatures a safe distance away, and her tumble allows for you to freely move around and avoid taking damage. This isn't perfect, of course, as ranged camps will still deal a lot of damage early, but when taking down camps such as the Krugs in particular, it is possible to kite them to the point where you don't take any damage at all. This is fairly useful, considering just how few other champions who are specifically designed to be played in the jungle can actually do this. Jungle Vayne plays a lot like Kindred in this regard, as well as in the percent health damage aspect that I covered earlier. On top of this, Vayne has a small bit of crowd control which can prove useful when going for ganks. Although her condemn isn't the easiest CC to land, it can still be good when used simply as a displacement. If you go in for a gank and the enemy isn't near a wall, you can try and position yourself in such a way that allows for your condemn to put them closer to your team. In most cases, this will at the very least burn their flash, if not secure a kill. Of course, you are still better off trying to land your condemn against a wall for both the extra damage and the stun. Because of Vayne's percent health damage, she is also very good at taking down neutral objectives such as Dragon and Baron. I'll emphasize this more around Dragon because you are actually capable of soloing Dragon, but will not be able to solo Baron. Once you've achieved a fair bit of lifesteal, you should have no problem soloing the Dragon because of your smite. This allows for your team to focus more on winning their own lanes, as you'll be able to provide them with Dragon buffs hassle-free. It will of course be easier if you do at least have one other member such as your support nearby to trade Dragon aggro with, but it's not necessarily a requirement. And the final good thing about playing Vayne in the jungle is how easily you can counter enemy invades. Because you are in the jungle, you are going to be surrounded by terrain at all times. This means that if the enemy decides to invade, which they probably will do because of your early clear, you'll easily be able to land your condemn on them and run away to safety if needed. If you find yourself far enough ahead, you can press this advantage even more and invade the enemy jungle while using your condemn aggressively to force a flash or pick up a kill. Let's move on to the bad things about playing Jungle Vayne. The first of which, as I've already mentioned, is your very poor first few clears. If you want to try this build out, please note that it will benefit you greatly if you are capable of kiting neutral camps, as it will make it much easier to survive without extra assistance from your team. If you are unable to properly kite the jungle camp, you may find yourself dying, or even returning to base after every single camp to top up on health. Going with this is the fact that Jungle Vayne leaves your team vulnerable in the early game. You take quite a bit of time to ramp up and really become useful, which means if the enemy team has a jungler such as Lee Sin or Elise, who are strong in the early game, it essentially becomes a 4v5 for the time being, as you are unable to intervene. And finally, another bad thing about playing Vayne in the jungle is that you'll either want your top laner or your mid laner to be fairly tanky, as you won't be. This isn't terrible, as many teams win without a tank, but in the current meta, tanks are very powerful, and having one in your top lane will make your team much better rounded. You may find yourself with a very small amount of tank stats by the end of the game, depending on if you need an early Hex Drinker or if you buy something like a Black Cleaver, but you aren't really going to have enough to save you from an insane amount of burst. Now let's move on to the Teemo. This is a section that deals with the really bad aspects of Jungle Vayne and covers some of the biggest problems and reasons why you probably wouldn't play her this way. The first thing I'd like to cover is something that I refer to as the Shyvana problem. For the most part, many people who choose to play Shyvana in the jungle take Ghost instead of Flash so they can more easily gank a lane. When playing Vayne jungle, you feel the same need to have an extra bit of mobility to really get off a proper gank. As your ganks are entirely reliant on landing your condemn, you may find yourself burning Flash very frequently to try and properly line your shot up, as there really isn't any other way to gank with Vayne other than running and tumbling into the lane. And one of the biggest issues when playing Vayne in the jungle comes with her incredibly short auto attack range. This makes it much more difficult when trying to secure a kill while ganking, because if you gank their bottom lane for example, it's entirely possible that they turn the gank around and kill you simply because of their AD carry having a longer auto attack range. This means it is important to try and keep the enemy focused on your team until you are prepared to dish out tons of damage. And in many cases, if your team doesn't cooperate perfectly, you may wind up dying very easily anyways. And lastly, Vayne is arguably the most mechanically intensive AD carry champion in the game. as knowing how to space her autos and position yourself properly with her tumble can be the difference in obtaining several kills or dying repeatedly. Obviously, the more skilled you are, the less likely this is to be a problem for you, but for players like myself who aren't mechanically proficient, it can be quite the obstacle to overcome. But anyways, that's all I have regarding Jungle Vayne. I didn't think the specific build was really great because it's almost entirely situational. If the enemy team has a great early game jungler, I'd heavily advise against building this, but if they don't, feel free to try it out. If you get far enough ahead, it can be pretty fun having free reign with your condemn within the jungle. Feel free to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and subscribe if you are new around here and would like to see more. If you didn't like the video, feel free to leave a dislike. All I ask is that you leave a comment with what you believe I could have done better, so that my future content can continue to improve. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys in this video. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.